So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Friday JW3 briefing. Anyone doesn't know me, I'm Judy Trotter. I head up adult education at JW3, and a special welcome to our guest, Sarah Malley, formerly known as Sarah Peters, as everyone kept saying to me in the office. So it's nearly 9 months since the 7th of October. It seems unbelievable, and unbelievable that we're still this need to meet on a Friday morning and connect with each other and with Israel. So thank you for continuing to join us every week, and thank you especially to Sarah for joining us this morning on, as I said before, a momentous week all over, where we've woken up to a new landslide victory government, and some people in government in becoming MPs that we probably would rather hadn't, and possibly the other way with people losing seats that we'd rather they hadn't. So it's going to be interesting times for us ahead. Meanwhile, in Israel, it's been a horrible week yet again. It continues. And again, thank you to Sarah. So just to give a brief background to Sarah, she served the Jewish community for over 2 decades, leading impactful change processes, especially in Canada, Israel, and around the world. She's a prolific writer and a public speaker. She's Director General of the Jewish Federations Canada-UIA in Jerusalem. She's based in Jerusalem. And she most recently, before that, held the role of Vice President of Masa, which many of you will have heard of. In 2022, Sarah was named as one of the favorite of our women right now by Future of Israel, which I particularly liked. There's plenty more there, but obviously you're not here to listen to me, but to Sarah. And we're just hoping that the internet in Israel will stay okay. We've had a couple of delays while we've been chatting this morning. So if it starts delaying, don't worry. If it freezes, she will come back. Sarah, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here on a home turf. It's not my regular, I generally don't play at home. I'm normally working for the Jewish community in Canada, but I grew up in London, UK, and spent a lot of time with Raymond, with many of the other Judy's other colleagues. So it's wonderful to be back and be with you. And it's ironic that I'm opening up this morning today about Israel when the headline, or the top headline on Ynet, which is the main media outlet in Israel, was about your general election. So that made me chuckle a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on more broadly, and then I'll talk a bit more personally. I'll just say that I've spent the morning, got up very early to cook for my daughter, who's in the, we have two daughters in the army, one son-in-law in the army. And I woke up very early to cook for one of my daughters who is in the north, and who was told that she would, if there was an attack in the north, which feels imminent, but also never happening at the same time, that she would have to be, they would evacuate the base, but she would have to stay there. So my husband is driving 2.5 hours to make sure she has a good Shabbat dinner and Shabbat food. But that's the kind of heartstrings that a mother has to endure regularly and painfully. But I'm very happy that we're giving her good Shabbat dinner, which gives me some kind of sense of comfort. But let me start with broad. I feel like this week, and I think you have a partnership region also up north, the Jewish community, the Anglo-Jewish community is connected to Carmiel. We felt acutely this week the sense of being on a war on many fronts and also on an internal front. An Arab Israeli from the north went into a supermarket this week, I think 2 days ago. Time was very, very strange here, so I might not get my days right. And stabbed a bunch of young Israelis in what can only be described as a heroic response. The first young man, who's also a soldier, who was stabbed multiple times, was able to shoot and kill the terrorist. But it was a painful reminder that we're not at ease in Israel proper. And that's really scary. I live in Jerusalem. I live, pardon the pun, a stone's throw away from Bet Safafa. It is not a calming feeling to know that there are forces outside of Israel incentivizing, funding, and mobilizing Israeli Arabs to inflict acts of terror against Israelis. So, and then within Judah and Samaria, again, a heightening of tensions and radicalization, which is, again, our borders were totally shattered, and our sense of security and the idea of having a border. The border, you look on a map, you see a border, you think, oh, a border, that keeps people out, keeps people in. There was a sense that it's not semi-porous, it's not porous, this is hermetic. That's what a border does. So since, on October 7th, that concept was shattered for us. And now we have that internal kind of bleeding, and it's a very nerve-wracking feeling to endure. The South is also a tragedy and a travesty, because albeit our forces are in Gaza, again this week a house in Sdot Negev was damaged by a rocket from Gaza. So one thinks, and I'm sure the British media don't hold back on the idea that Israel has conquered and whatever Gaza, but it's, again, Hamas is still holding on tight. There are still rockets and attacks on Israel from Gaza, which feels just so awful, particularly since on a daily basis we wake up to loss of life. Yesterday, a young boy, I only think about this young boy because he's related to some of the work that I do with Canada, but a young boy actually from Kiryat Shmona in the north, who is serving in Gaza, was killed, and he's an only son. And he was wounded, and he said, I'm going to go back. And my heart breaks. Just our heart breaks over and over and over again for this mum and this gorgeous boy. So that's the South, and I'm saying this really in sound bites because I'd love to open up to questions and to hear you. The North is, I don't know how much you hear about the North, but there are 60,000 evacuees from the North in Israel. And then there are, of those, most of them had gone into hotels, hundreds of hotels across the country. So they basically had to kind of split up these communities that were quite, for the most part, many of these communities, particularly Kiryat Shmona, which is a community of 23,000 people, basically dispersed them across the whole of Israel. So imagine, Finchley or Golders Green or Hendon or wherever you're from. I'm sorry, that was a very, very Northwest London little picture. I'm sure you're from other places as well. But taking your community and then dispersing it across the whole of, the sizes are different, but across, it's a real loss, because communities are really losing their sense of community. And they're no longer in hotels as well. So people are beginning to settle down in other places, in Netanya, in places where their kids can go to school. And so we're feeling a double loss of the communities up north, where they don't know if they're going to go back. Their houses there's a lot of ruin up north. And at the same time, their own community is now decimated to a point of what will happen, what can happen. If and when return is possible. But the real people that are now bearing the brunt of the North is the new border. So 5 kilometers was evacuated, but the new border, basically Israel's shrunk, which is insane, because as you know, if you put your finger on a globe, it will cover Israel. But Israel's shrunk by another 5 kilometers because now it's a buffer zone. Largely without civilians, which means that there's a new border that are getting the brunt of the North, or Hezbollah in the North. Now, I just want to remind everybody, and I know this seems, for Israelis, it seems totally absurd that it's July, because we're it sounds cliched, but it's true. We're still stuck somewhere else. And it's summer holidays. So imagine these kids in these kibbutzim in the north, on the new border of the north of Israel, with incessant rocket fire and warnings and having to go into bomb shelters. These were the images over Shavuot. These were the images when they're over their graduation ceremonies. And yeah, I mean, the only word that I can say is trauma. I mean, these kids, we're working, and I know many communities across the globe are helping with respite, and so is the Israeli government. But there are new borders and there are new communities of suffering, and that's a new community that is really enduring a whole lot. But basically, if they move, then Israel shrinks further. So this is and we're in a whole host of unknowns. Once we move from the fronts, we're in a whole host of unknowns. As you may have probably heard, there may be another attempt at the hostage release. Hostages being released. They will be released in, I'm sorry for the term, installments, which is a horrible and technical term, but in stages. And we don't know if that's going to happen. The torment for the hostage families is endless, and their hopes go up and down, up and down, and up and down, and just we don't know. And it's there are moments of joy in Israel. We're not all walking around. That's probably what makes Israelis so strong, that we're able to celebrate. But you celebrate with a piece of yourself in the tunnels. Like, you can't, even if you celebrate fully, it will pop up and hit you. It's called intermittent trauma, that you're not out of it, you're living in it. And our hearts belong to these kids, these women, the elderly, the bodies. And there's no joy, full joy. There is joy, but full joy is in deficit. And there's a real feeling that we won't be full again if they don't come back. But at the same time, we can't afford for Gaza to be for there to be a ceasefire, because the South will not be safe. So we're in this whole set of no-win situation. We want Hezbollah to stop, but we also don't want a war. We had Iran on April the 4th, but rockets coming from Iran. I mean, we know what that's going to be like. It's going to be mammoth, and it's going to be national, and it's going to be many more casualties than what happened on October the 7th. So we want the I think I've frozen. Myself frozen, but never mind. I think you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay. So we want we want to finish Hezbollah, but we don't want to be in a situation where, but we also don't want to suffer. So we're in a whole host of no-win situations. I'll talk, I think, a little bit more personally. So for me, our family feels okay. You'll find a lot of Israelis saying that they are feeling okay. Judy, stop me if you can't hear me. Or
we can hear you okay. Your picture's just behind slightly,
okay.
So keep going.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. You'll find a lot of Israelis saying that we're okay. And what okay basically means is, and I'm going to be crass, so I apologize, is that we haven't lost a limb. We don't know people that have lost limbs. We don't have anybody from our family who's a hostage. We haven't lost direct family members. And we're largely in a place that's safe. So that's what okay means to be an Israeli, I think, right now. And you'll find that by degree. You'll find people that, were in the South on October the 7th and survived, and their family is intact, and they will say they're okay. So that's where we are. That's how I feel. But I have to tell you about my family and my kids. This is my kids' age group are the people that have suffered, have taken the toll of this war. My daughter has lost a very good friend, and my daughter's 21. She's lost a very good friend. They went to visit his family a while ago. No, on Yom HaZikaron, on the Memorial Day for fallen soldiers and victims of terror in Israel. And they said to his family, they brought a book of memories. His name's Shachar Friedman. You'll see all these gorgeous boys and girls and women who are fallen, and they're all at the peak of their lives. So they're all full of vitality and joy and naughtiness and everything that makes good young people great. And they support a soccer team or a baseball team or something. And Shachar Friedman was one of them, was one of those larger-than-life characters who was killed in Gaza. And so my daughter and her friends came to the family on the Yom HaZikaron, and they gave them a book of memories of Shachar. But they said to the family, this isn't the end of our friendship and our love for Shachar. It's the beginning of our community with you. We love you. We're not going anywhere. And so all these little new communities of pain and legacy and memory are kind of forming. My second daughter, who's 20, she has a very, very good friend. Her name's Gal. She got married a few months before the war. And Ivriel was like the main bridesmaid. It's called a malava in Hebrew, and you accompany the bride the night before and all the way through. And she married a young man called Amit, and they lived in Netivot. And on October 7th, Amit got up and knew what was happening, took his gun, got in the car. They're a religious couple, but religion was secondary on that day, as you know. And drove out, and he didn't even make it to reach for his gun. He was shot by terrorists in the car and was killed. And my daughter helped Gal unpack that married house and sell the stuff. And we shortly discovered that she was pregnant. And she had a baby boy 2 months ago. And at the Brit, at the circumcision, she said to the audience, she said, some people will, telling me, your baby, he will be your strength, he will be your rock, he will be your joy. And I want to tell you that I'm his mum, and I will be his strength. I will be his rock. I will be my baby's joy. And you see the strength and the honor and the pride and the love of this woman, and you just can't believe how amazing this woman is. And she called her baby Oz, which means strength. Outside my window, and I was actually going to show you, I have these little blackberries. I have a little blackberry bush. There is a lot of pain, but nature still tells us that things grow and things bloom and beauty is around us, and there are sunsets and there are blue skies and there are beautiful images of babies being born and marriages happening, and we try and cling to those moments, even though some of them are so devastating. My son lost his head of school. He's just finishing his A-levels, which finishes A-levels for Bagruyot. This is the scar tissue of my little family. And again, we're okay. We're okay. We're good. I'll stop because I'd love to hear some questions. I've got loads more to tell you about the Haredim and what's going on within Israel and conscription and stuff like that. But I think I've promised you, I've done what I promised I'd do, which is to start broad and end a little bit personally. So I'd love to hear some questions if there are any.
Lovely. Thank you, Sarah. And it's so painful to listen to and yet so real. And and you've done it so beautifully and brought up things that I certainly wasn't aware of or focused on with the splitting of the communities. Of course, we knew that, but it hadn't just been quite pointed out in the way that you did it, that actually even just getting back together would be wonderful, but almost feels impossible. I mean,
well, I'll just tell you something nice sorry, Judy, just to end more on a positive note, and this, when I speak about philanthropy, I'm sure your philanthropy is not dissimilar, but we gave some money for kids to come together who are doing their A-levels, their bagruyot, these 17 and 18-year-old children. And we brought them together across the whole of Israel. And Judy, you would not imagine the beauty and the joy of seeing these kids coming together who had been, one's in Eilat, one's in Tiberias, and these best friends coming together to embrace. It's gives you so much pleasure. And those are the little moments of light.
Okay, so we've got just under 10 minutes for questions. Sarah's happy to hear from you, so you can do both today. You can either put your yellow hand up, the raised hand. If you don't know how to do that, you can unmute yourself. I may remute you, but I will have noted that you want a question, or you can put it in the chat. And our first one's in the chat from Jacqueline, who would like to hear about the Haredim. Oh, so you've... Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And the IDF.
Very, very distressed. I should say that I come from a very Orthodox family in the UK, and we live a pretty Orthodox life in Israel. And much of the religious Zionist community feels not dissimilarly to me. So this isn't split Orthodox, not Orthodox, actually. This is a general critique of the people that are having that have children in the army. Or that have served in the army. It just makes one so angry that the share of Israel's responsibility for its own safety is not shared fairly or totally unevenly. And to add insult to injury, what is facilitating that is our taxpayers' money. Our money. So there's a double fury there. There are moves to, as you probably know, there are moves to create circumstances in which the army will be able to, Haredim will go into the army. These are the Haredim that are mostly, for the most part, not engaged in Torah study. That's how the pragmatic, the idealists would say they all need to engage to serve in the army. But I believe pragmatism should prevail, and we should work with what we can. And change is slow and painful, and that the Israeli society also needs to adapt the army for this population. And now some people would say no, they need to suck it up, but that's naive, I think. And as somebody smart told me once, self-righteousness is not a strategy. The fact that we are right doesn't mean that's going to get us very far. So to be compassionate culturally to the Haredim, I believe, but to be unequivocal, and the consequences may be cruel. That there'll be less money for the Haredi community, less money for children to go into daycare so that men can learn, which is the main money line. If you look at it, that allows the men to be able to do what they're doing, which is systematically avoid conscription as a community, and we need to change that. I really believe that, And it pains me that I have to say that because I feel a lot of respect for Torah learning, but it's not a sustainable model, and it's really a toxic force in Israeli society right now.
One thing I've never asked, not really thought about until this minute, is when we're talking about Haredi in this way, are we including the women in that?
In terms of conscription, women, that's an interesting question. I don't know enough about it. There's always, in fact, one of my daughters considered it, because she's, as I said, Orthodox, to do service, which isn't the IDF service. There is an option for all religious girls, women, to do that, and that my assumption is that they would be included in that. But that's not the primary conversation that's happening here. The good news about the Haredi community is that, albeit demographically, looks like it's going to, it's growing, is that there are trends in Israeli society that are also universal trends that are impacting that community, like women going into the workplace, which affects kind of the boundaries of that community and opens them up a little bit, which is this is ideological and values-based judgment, but for me, that's a good thing.
One of the other things that came out of that conversation about the change was the question that comes up every week, anyway, is Netanyahu. And there was, among a certain amount of people, the hope that would force an early election rather than having to wait until this is over, which is obviously taking so long. Do you think that would affect it? Do you think there's any election in the air at all? We keep hearing little snippets of what's happening in the Knesset that might, but overall there's no movement on himself.
It doesn't look like Netanyahu's going anywhere. It's just this is the government we have, and we chose this government. You get apropos your feelings this morning, you get the government that you choose as a society. And yes, our political system's dysfunctional, and I dream of the two-party system, but we don't have that, and so we're held ransom by smaller segments of our society, but we could make smarter choices as a community.
So thank you. Is there a final question? We've only got a couple of minutes. It means we'll go over. Thank you for bringing so much to the table, Sarah. There's just a lot in what you said this morning, and you've done it beautifully and added to our story. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I hope we'll keep in touch, and I hope you'll come to JW3 and speak in person when you're over in London.
Oh, I always keep my visit secret, because it's all just family. But I promise you, Judy, I will. Next time I'm in, I'll let you know.
And you'll see what we have, the projects we have with the hostages as well, with the love hostage padlocks. We have padlocks all along.
I know, I see it. I'm friends with some of you on Facebook, and I see what you're doing, and your love and your care and your commitment.
We do.
Yeah, look, just keep Israel in your hearts and souls. That would be my message when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, which is from the Shema. If you ever feel anger or upset or annoyed, as I tell everybody, turn that into something good. Our enemies want to debilitate us and paralyze us with our own anger and resentment. And anytime you feel anything close to that, just give some charity or do a good thing or call up an Israeli friend or send somebody you love in Israel some chocolates.
A very nice positive note to end on. Thank you. Wish you
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom to everyone on screen, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Bye, Judy.
Take care, everyone. Bye.